Excellent. Here's another one. Let's take it a little bit deeper. I'd love you to start with this, Mike, as it relates to, I mean, you can even just take this from volleyball and then we'll work backwards. I'd love to hear you hit this from the sports performance side. So how important is assessment of athletes, and what should we be assessing, especially when it comes to like volleyball?
I think it's easy. What is measured is rewarded. I think that if people bother to measure something, there is a reward or an outcome involved. I think that our sport is very metrics based. How high do you touch? How fast do you run? Just like every other sport, everything is based on combine-esque skill sets. It is because we need another tool of evaluation. So in our game, let's look at a team, and a team goes out or an athlete goes out and she's not starting. Let's say she's not starting for the team she's on. That's not necessarily only dictated by her abilities. It's also dictated by the abilities of others around her. If there are 7 kids that are better than her, she feels like she's a failure based on the fact that she is not on the floor. That is not true. That could have something to do with the other 7 are just inches ahead of her and moving. We're all moving, but sometimes we don't see that motion because we're stuck in the emotion of not being on the floor. The assessment is to allow people, and for kids, it's important for them to understand they are moving. I am getting better. And so the assessment, while we use it to do a lot of different things, namely evaluate our teaching methods, it's also another tool to let these guys know that we're moving. It's not a generation that embraces incremental growth. It is not. This program and what Eric really masters is the value of incremental growth. 1 pound is 1 pound. And I think the sooner they embrace that and understand that, the faster they'll grow. I think it's massive. We need to be able to show the athlete, we need to be able to show the customer that they're growing. This gives us yet another way to show people, hey, we're getting where we go. Remember, I loop all the way back to the start. Athletic excellence, lifetime experience. If I can show that your body, your athleticism is growing immensely in the weight room, I've got half of that already achieved. And I'm moving towards my end goal or my end philosophy, just as he is. So I think it's the most critical part of it.
And I love too how you talked about like it's easy to get caught in comparison, which you don't have control over, versus looking at the things that you do have control over. Like you can put reps toward, I can tangibly move something, versus if Sally or Tina are better than me doing the same thing, it's so easy to get caught in that like despair loop. Oh, they're always jumping a little bit higher than me, or they're going a little bit more than me, versus these type of metrics you're talking about are like they're centered on you and things that you can actually control.
Well, we always harp on best version. You be the best version of yourself. And that gets lost in team sports because, yourself. I mean, that seems almost selfish. Right. But this gives the individual a chance to maximize themselves. And, at the end of the day, a better you is a better us.
Right.
And so it's about each person getting better.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. All right, Eric, from the sports performance side, like, is assessment important? Which it sounds like an obvious question. And then just talk about what should be assessed and why.
Yeah, I think from a base level, it's important to see, did we see improvement by adding this in, right? Did this get improved? What gets tracked gets improved, right? So we get a base level to see, do we see progress over time? 2, it's also useful for me to get an idea how an athlete moves. It's not going to tell me everything if I just do one assessment, but really as a coach, I'm always assessing their movement, right? Because as an athlete, based upon their practice schedule, their school, as much as they sit in a day, like how are their hips moving when they come in today? You know what I mean? That may be off just because they've had more stress of their day and they've been sitting more today. And they haven't been as hydrated, right? It's not necessarily they have an actual dysfunction there. We need to give the tissues some love and give the joints some love and get it moving a little bit, And so then if I know that, then I say, okay, we can spend a few more minutes doing that, or we can modify the warm-up doing that. But if I don't know what their normal or natural state is, I'm not going to be able to differentiate that as a coach, right? So I need to, have that baseline level. So then I know what I can expect at the start of our sessions. One thing you kind of talked about earlier about holding the rope and holding on to things. I remember back as I was getting on to head coach, you're like, I'm tired of doing leg swings. Like, I promote CrossFit, but leg swings at the beginning of our warm up, like, let's do something different. And I'm like, we can do all sorts of things, but the leg swing is my one assessment tool that I really get to see. Where's your hips moving at today? Where's your mindset at? Where's your balance at on the foot that's on the ground? Like, there's a lot of things I'm actually watching that, as much as I'm nonchalantly walking around and talking to people. When I'm talking, I'm paying attention to what's going on, you know? And so I think it's important that when you're working with an athlete, you're always assessing, because that's going to give you a gauge of how you need to approach the next drill, how you communicate with them next, things like that. I do think from a base level up front, that also gives us something to give them targets to aim at too, because if I give them targets, it's going to help them become a better version of themselves. Like Mike mentioned, the best version of you is the best version for the team. So now if I can give you targets to help, this is what the better version of yourself looks like, or best version looks like. Now I can strive to achieve that. So that way it helps bring up that system as a whole of the team.
Yeah. And I love how you differentiated assessment of the day versus assessment overall. Because assessment of the day, how high can I jump? How fast am I? That's a bigger, longer term investment, requires, Mike, all that like mundane, like, well, it's not moving. But assessment of the day is sometimes left to the side, because warm up is boring. Cool down could be boring. You know what I mean? It's those things like, I already know how to do this. I feel good today, coach. Great. Let me see it. Great. Why don't we just do this over here? Where that's another level of protection for that athlete to know, like, is the training we're going to do today appropriate for who walked in the door today? And that might be a different girl than walked in the door yesterday. Based upon what went on, school stress, other things going on. And that's a great way to assess that. It's beautiful.